Hey, what's up, everybody? Wanted to do a real quick video, just give you guys a little glimpse into the world of boxing media and how the establishment scares a lot of people into asking tough questions. So look, the role of media, whether you consider yourself a writer, a YouTuber, a podcaster, whatever, the role of media is to be objectively, reasonably critical and skeptical, to ask tough questions, not to be a hater, not to be over the top, but to stay intellectually honest and to just challenge the status quo, to challenge the narrative that is being presented by our overlords, right? And this is not limited to boxing media. This is in the political arena, the entertainment arena, all facets of the entertainment arena, all media. This is what you're supposed to do. But increasingly in current times, you see people are just unwilling to do this, especially younger guys coming up. And if we're just talking about boxing media here, you know, guys just getting access in the boxing media and just starting to get a name and get things rolling a little bit, they're almost scared to ask the tough questions, because when you do that, the establishment comes after you. And it happens to me quite often. So Gervonta Davis recently, last weekend, fought Raleigh Romero, scored a TKO 6 win. And regardless of how you feel about that fight, I'm not going to get into all that. If you're curious about how I feel, I did a detailed breakdown, the good, the bad, the ugly of the entire event on my podcast this week, The Neutral Corner, episode 316. Check it out. All right. That's not the purpose of this video. I just want to share with you guys a tweet that I posted. And I'll read this real quick. Looking at the Ring Magazine's ratings from 126 to 140, that's 4 different divisions, I noticed that Tank Davis has fought exactly one fighter that we currently, keyword currently, have rated. Isaac Cruz, who's number 6 at 135. That is one fighter out of 40 fighters in those 4 divisions. It's time to step it up. So most people understood what I meant by this and agree, regardless, of how you view this particular criteria here that I present. You agree that it's time for Gervonta Davis to step up the opposition. I'd say 99% of the response was positive, but there was a handful of people out there who really, really got triggered. And I could show you the responses from all the fanboys. There's a bunch of them. I'm not even going to go there, okay? I wanted to show you a couple particular responses, though, because it's relevant to the video, the subject of this video. So let's see. Here we go. Mr. Stephen Espinoza, Mr. Showtime Boxing, Mr. PBC himself, felt the need to quote tweet me not once, but 3 times. Okay, that's how much this triggered him. I believe the first one was this one here in the middle, where he clearly kind of didn't read my tweet very well, because he brings up Pedraza and Santa Cruz, both world champions at the time, blah, blah, blah. He forgot that I used the word currently in my tweet, right? I wasn't talking about at the time. But then he kind of corrected himself and he posted these other 2 tweets here. What's interesting is that he brings up Pedraza in all 3, right? He brings up Pedraza. What he doesn't understand, Stephen Espinoza's response was so intellectually immature and dishonest. Okay, he's trying, because he's an intelligent guy. He knows what I was saying and what I wasn't saying. He's kind of adding his own context, his own subtext to my tweet, and he's trying to compare apples to oranges. There's an agenda there, and it's what he does. Okay, by the way, all network executives, all promoters do this to a certain degree. Some just more than others, okay? Especially when it comes to particular fighters. They do it with some fighters more than other fighters. And some of these guys do it more than their peers. Okay, but he brings up Pedraza in all 3 tweets. What's so funny is Steven doesn't realize he's just proving my point for me, because Pedraza is Gervonta Davis's best win when you consider where Pedraza rated at the time Gervonta Davis fought him, right? Because Santa Cruz was clearly past his best, and he was fighting 2 or 3 divisions above his best weight, right? And I can say this, we could break down the Barrios win. Barrios was rated at the time, but everybody knows now. We've seen what's happened since. By the way, he shouldn't have been undefeated coming into that win. He got a gift in a fight before he ended up fighting Davis, but they kept that undefeated record because there was a plan there, just like they did with Raleigh Romero. He should have lost to Jackson Marinas. I could go on and on and on. But Pedraza, I agree that's Tank Davis's best win. I think most reasonable people do. That fight was in 2017. So Gervonta Davis's best win by a mile, by the way, was in 2017. That's 5 years ago. We're currently in 2022. So Espinoza doesn't even realize, because he was so emotional and visceral with his response, he didn't think about it intellectually. He just proved my point for me. That's what's so funny about these responses. So listen, I'm not interested in getting in a back and forth with Espinoza, right? I didn't respond to any of these tweets. I did post something. I'll share it with you in a second. But I wanted to show this to you guys, okay? Just to indicate why so many of the younger guys coming up are afraid to ask questions. And even some of the older established guys who really, really depend on their income from boxing to pay all their bills. They got to play the role. They got to go along with the narrative. They don't want to challenge it because they don't want the head of Showtime Boxing shitting on them publicly, which is what Espinoza is attempting to do here. He doesn't realize he's making himself look foolish and just kind of proving the point for me. But also, I should add real quick, at no point in my tweet, and look, there's a character limit on Twitter. You can only say so much in one tweet. But at no point in my tweet did I suggest that this was the only way to review a fighter's resume, or even the best way to review a fighter's resume. This was simply me just presenting a different viewpoint, an alternative viewpoint. And those of you who are reasonable and intellectually honest understood where I was going with this. Why would I take a fighter's opposition and look at where they rate now? Why would I do that? I would do that to see how those wins and losses, maybe if they have wins and losses, how they have aged, right? Because if your best wins aren't even guys who are still rated, what does that suggest? It suggests either those fighters were overrated when you fought them, or that they were past their prime and at the tail end of their career. That's what it suggests. So when your best wins, whether it be 2 years ago, 3, 4, 5 years ago, if your best wins are against guys who aren't even rated right now, might not even be fighting right now, that says a lot about how your opposition, how your wins, how your fights have aged. That's all I was bringing up here. Pretty easy, pretty simple to follow. And again, at no point did I say this is the only way or even the best way to review and properly rate a fighter's resume. I never suggested that. But several people that got triggered by this tried to add that context to my tweet. They basically added their own verbiage as if they could get inside my brain and understand what I was trying to say, when I clearly put it here in the tweet. It's right there. It's very, very clear. Anyway, I wanted to share this with you guys. Just a quick response. Actually, I won't even call it a response. Whoa. What I did here is I screenshot Espinoza's tweet. I just did a screenshot because I wasn't engaged, or I wasn't interested in engaging with him. And again, I'll read this. I say, guess it'd be idiotic of me to also mention that Canelo has fought our current #1 and #10 middleweights, our current #2 super middleweight, and our current #1 and #5 light heavyweights, while being the undisputed super middleweight champion of the world. No need to bring up bought and paid for WBA ratings or regular titles, right? That's what I brought up, or that's what I posted. And again, just screenshot it because I didn't want to get in the back and forth. But I stuck with the same criteria that I judged Tank's resume on, and I applied it to Canelo's resume. And what you find is several of his wins and even some of his losses have aged fairly well. Look at Irislandi Lara, who's our current #10 at 160. And Canelo fought him at 154 almost a decade ago. Irislandi Lara is still around, right? He was a highly rated 154 recently, and now he recently fought at 160, and we have him in our top 10. That win has aged extremely well over a guy who continues to be a top-level fighter. Gennady Golovkin. I mean, I could have brought up the fact that Gennady Golovkin is a unified title holder and the top-rated guy at super middleweight and has been for a long time, and he's a future Hall of Famer. I could have brought all that up, right? There's several other factors I could have brought up here, but I didn't do that. I also didn't compare apples to oranges like Stephen Espinoza did. If you look at Stephen Espinoza's tweet, first of all, he suggests that I'm an idiot, and he suggests that I'm not intelligent because you have to be intelligent to go where he's going with his take. But I love how he brings up Pedraza and Barrios and tries to compare them as if they're similar. He calls them titleists when Tank fought them. Pedraza had the IBF, I think, 130 title when Tank fought him. Legit title. Pedraza beat legit guys. He was a legit title holder. But Barrios had a regular belt, the WBA regular belt. And if you look at recent history, you can basically call that WBA regular belt the PBC belt. Most of those guys are PBC fighters who have that belt. Nobody considers them the true title holder of the division. Barrios had the 140 version. We all know who the 140 champion is. We all know who the 135 champion is. And well, that's actually going to be decided this weekend in Australia. Okay, so the regular belts that Tank won at those weights were trash. They were nothing. Right? We know who the real champions in those divisions are. But Espinoza tries to compare Pedraza and Barrios like it was the same thing. Clearly it wasn't. Then he goes into sanctioning organization ratings. He mentions Cuellar with the WBA, Walsh with the IBF, Gamboa. He brings up Gamboa. Are you kidding me? The guy was fighting with one leg, 1 foot, one leg. He brings up sanctioning organization ratings when I had been talking about Ring Magazine ratings. So Espinoza is trying to compare apples to oranges, and he's trying to conflate timelines and events and situations that are not at all relatable. What he is doing is intellectually dishonest and immature by calling names and such. And he's purposely doing this because he's a reasonably intelligent guy. He's lying, and he's doing this spin. And that's what they do over there in Tank's management. And all I'm doing as a member of the press is being skeptical, critical in a reasonable way. I'm sticking to facts, and I'm asking some questions. At no point have I ever said that I don't like Gervonta Davis as a fighter. I'm a fan of the guy as a fighter. He's young, he's explosive, he's aggressive. He's fun to watch. You know, I just want to see him fight the best. I want to see him in there against the absolute best. Whatever weight it is, 130, 135, 140, I just want to see him against the best. That's all I'm asking for. But because I'm bringing up these different ways of looking at things, like my original tweet here, some people are getting really triggered. And by the way, if we look at Gervonta Davis's resume, let me share it real quick, and then we'll go. But if we look at his resume, 27 professional fights. And if we do look at the historical ratings, there are 4 guys that were rated at one point in the top 10 by Ring Magazine. One is Pedraza back in 2017, still his best win 5 years ago. One was Leo Santa Cruz. One was Barrios briefly, and now it's Isaac Cruz, who probably won't be in the top 10 about a year from now. So that's 4. Okay, that's 4 out of 27 professional fights. That's about 15%. So about 15% of his fights have come against guys rated in the top 10. And I bring that sort of fact up, and people will say, well, he's in his 20s. He's still developing. Really? He turns 28 this year. The guy went pro in 2013. This is his 10th year as a pro. He is a decade-long pro. He's still developing? There are fighters out there who have about, with about half the fights Gervonta Davis had cleaned out a division or fought for titles in multiple weights. You guys know the names. I don't even need to bring it up. Those things matter. It's all relevant. And it shouldn't be held against me for asking questions. And the tactics that some of these guys in the power positions, the promoters, the network executives, etc., use to try to bully members of the press who ask tough questions, it's not cool. It's a major problem in media right now. So I wanted to bring this up as an example to show you guys why so many people in boxing media in particular are really just scared to ask tough questions or bring up tough viewpoints in a reasonable way. That's because the establishment goes after them. It's a big problem.